Welcome to the HIV podcast. Each week we focus on a person, historical event or pop culture moment linked to HIV and explore the story of what actually happened. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jess, and between us we've been working in the field of HIV for 40 years. Our aim is to get as many people as possible HIV educated.
Welcome to the HIV podcast.
So that was our special guest introducing our podcast this week. I interview him later. I say interview. I mean, I'm no Jeremy Paxman. It's more of a chat. But there you go. Hello, how are you?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for asking. Some of you might be wondering why Jess has developed a Liverpool accent. It's not Jess, it's Zoe. Hello.
Hello. I'll try and tone down the Scouse accent so people can understand what I'm saying.
Now, I know you've had a troubled week. Liverpool crashed out. I don't think it's too harsh to say that. They crashed out of the FA Cup and you're grieving.
Wow.
And I thought the best way to take your mind off that, put you front and centre, spotlight on Zoe in a podcast.
Talk about it in front of millions of people to bring my mood right back down.
I'm so sorry.
Told you not to mention that match ever again.
Oh, I know. I mean, you know that I'm from a footballing family. We've had to watch Chelsea beat Leicester. And as you know, my younger son supports Leicester. The older one supports Chelsea. It's very traumatic. And then I watched your match on Sunday. And I mean, it was very sad. Liverpudlians are very passionate about football. And we're here for you, Zoe. That's what we are. We're here.
Thank you. I'll get over it at some point. Maybe.
I'm going to buy you lots of vegan sweets to make up for it.
Well, that'll do. I'll take that.
Yeah.
There
you go.
Patterns.
Oh, our favourite. Wouldn't it be great if they could sponsor us?
I don't get my hopes up.
Oh, that would. They are really good.
I'm not on the Cadbury side of things, am I? Because I'm a vegan. So I can't get involved in all the chocolate chat, but Candy Kittens.
Fully on board.
Definitely. Fully on board with that sponsor if they want to.
Yeah. And it was a requirement when we filled your role that we found someone who wouldn't eat chocolate. So there was more for me.
Fair enough. There you go. It's all worked out perfectly.
That's not true, by the way, in case Sean's exploding right now.
HR.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Firstly, and most importantly, everyone will want to know what happened next with Florence the fox that was living in the garage at our centre.
Well, it's quite a short and sad story, isn't it? Really? Florence is no longer in our shed.
She just left.
I'm assuming so. Whether we scared her off us two trying to get in there to see where she was, who knows? But yeah, I've checked back twice and there's been no sightings of Florence.
Oh, Florence has moved on.
Whether she'll come back, she might miss us that much, make a return. I'll just keep checking the CCTV. That's took over my job role, checking the CCTV on a Tuesday.
To see whether she pops up.
Yeah, a little head out the shed.
Oh, so unfortunately there was no point, was there, doing a live, well, not a live episode. We could never go live. The amount of editing we have to do.
Watch.
No spring watch, no new wellies, no lovely new coat.
No, and we nearly went to Tesco for the birthing materials.
Absolutely. We were primed, ready to welcome some baby foxes into the world, and it's not happened. She's gone off. Whatever, Florence, we don't need you.
Yeah, whatever. So last year, Florence.
Absolutely.
But, there is a new update. Florence has left us. However, I got into work about 8:30 on Tuesday and genuinely thought there was a wolf looking at me in the garden.
Really?
I was tired and I just looked round and there was this big dog just staring at me, like, at our back door. And it was one of them moments I was like, am I just tired? And am I doing this? I had the fox in my mind. We've had a lot of wildlife come into our garden. So I was like, there's a wolf. Chantal, there's a wolf outside. But no, it was a stray dog. Went outside and sorted and put it back in his back garden.
We are a mecca for all animals.
Yeah, there's something going on in our garden that they're all attracted to.
But they're all they're coming to our centre. I mean, I've seen a picture of that dog that was in our garden.
Yeah, I took a
Not so keen. It was massive.
I mean, on the picture, it does look like it's staring us down, ready to eat us. I will agree. And that's what I seen at 8:30 in the morning, just staring at me.
I'm so glad I wasn't there because I'd have been like, Zoe, you have to do something immediately.
Yeah, me and Chantal were saying we're glad that it was us too. We're used to dogs and crazy dogs jumping up at us, so we took it on board and got it back to its home.
Well done. Oh, well done. So it did go back to its home. It's not stray. It just escaped from its garden and chosen our garden instead. Yeah. Marvellous. And good to know this could happen again. Great. All right, crikey. Shall we move on? I have got news.
Oh, go on.
Topical news, Zoe.
Even better.
Right, get your science head on. This is science.
Oh, that doesn't exist.
Oh, okay. So I think it was before Christmas we did an episode about crisps.
Yes.
A really tenuous episode because there is no link between crisps and HIV. We all know that. We know that now if you listen to the episode. But we did talk about a project called CRISPR. Science Project. Probably not called Science Project. Might have to edit that out.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
So we talked about the CRISPR gene editing that scientists were trying to do to see if they could eliminate HIV. And it turns out that you can.
You can?
Yes. I'm going to read it out to you. So working like scissors, but at a molecular level, it cuts DNA so bad bits can be removed or inactivated. So the bad bits are talking about are HIV in this case. The hope is to ultimately be able to rid the body entirely of the virus, although a lot of work is needed to check it would be safe and effective. This is very interesting.
Yes. Wow.
Now, I'm not going to go into the detail of how they are doing this, but I imagine they aren't using real scissors.
That's what I was picturing when you said scissors. You know, the standard IKEA scissors.
It's quite basic, isn't it? No, I mean, it's a lot more complex than that. But it just goes to show there are people working on ways of curing HIV. Scientists are looking at that. It's one of the things we hear from our service users sometimes is like, well, nobody's looking at this. No one cares about us. It's not true. This is what scientists are working on. The University of Amsterdam are on the case.
Oh, wow.
So that's good to know. Very interesting.
Definitely.
What they can do. So yes, so hold this space basically.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll be able to announce a cure one day in the future.
Amazing. That's some good news for the week.
As if we haven't been taken over as an animal shelter charity by then.
Yeah, Sean might have different opinions on that.
Yeah, probably will. Okay, are we ready? Because this week we have a special guest that I've spoken to. So Zoe, put your feet up, cup of tea, candy kittens. Listen to this.
Perfect. Can't wait.
This week's guest is a specialist pharmacist in HIV and sexual health who's worked in the NHS for 16 years and counting, 12 of which have been in HIV medicine at 4 different big HIV centres in London. Welcome, Abhi. Would you like to give your full name? Because you know I would butcher it and I really don't want to.
I know it is. It's not the easiest name in the world to pronounce. My name is Abhishek Katiyar, and but you can call me Abhi.
Perfect. Thank you for making things easier. I know you've listened to the podcast in the past, and I know that you know that I just have a trouble with pronouncing any names, even the simple ones. I struggle with Jess's name sometimes.
Sometimes I actually mispronounce my name too, you know. So is it Abhishek? Like, what's going on? Call me Abhi.
I can totally get on board with that. Now, the first thing that I wanted to know about your role is it only people with HIV that have specialist pharmacists, or do other conditions have specialist pharmacists as well?
That is a great question. And, you know, that's the question that people keep asking all the pharmacists who actually work in within the NHS in the secondary care. There are actually pharmacists in every specialty that you could think of. You know, there are renal pharmacists, there are neurology pharmacists, there are cardiology pharmacists, infectious diseases. You basically name a specialty and the chances are there is a pharmacist who spent their entire life specializing into that field. And it just so happens that for me, it's HIV and sexual health, with HIV being 95% of what I currently do.
You know what? I had no idea. I think maybe it's not well publicized, but you always think of pharmacists as just dishing out pills, which I know it's nothing like that. It's way more complicated
Exactly.
than that perception.
Absolutely. Like all the jokes are, oh, you're a legal drug dealer, or, pill popping pharmacists. But, if you do come into our world within the NHS, which is, I appreciate, a bit guarded because of confidentiality and stuff, you realize that, dispensing medication and handing it out is actually a very tiny part. It's all the governance that's required to make sure that the right drugs are going out each time, every single time. That background work is what takes a long time. So, when people come to you and say, all you have to do is stick a label on the box and give it, what is taking so long? Well, it's just the whole thing of making sure that, it is the right drug and it's good for you and it matches with your blood tests. So, yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that happens in the background.
Mm. And presumably some of it is also about making sure that medications don't clash. I know that's not a technical term.
Yes.
So that one doesn't offset another, that kind of thing.
Yes. So the term you're referring to is called drug-drug interactions.
Right.
So, a medication can interact with other drugs. Some medication can interact with alcohol. Medications interact with food. Sometimes it can interact with certain other conditions, So, but yes, majority of the time, what we try and make sure, and especially very important in HIV, is that other drugs that patients are taking, and that's including drugs that their GP gives them, their dentist gives them, or something they buy over the counter, like multivitamins, herbal stuff, and even class A drugs like cocaine, crystal meth, ecstasy, stuff like that. Even those are the ones that we actually, in a very non-judgmental manner, check to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the HIV tablets, because, these drugs will only work if there is a sufficient amount of level in your body. So yeah, it's a huge part, drug interactions.
My God. I mean, that's a huge responsibility.
Absolutely. And, especially because the HIV population is now aging. So you're aware of the data that, around 50% of the HIV population is over 50. And, whenever you look into the data and studies, you actually find that so many of these patients are not just taking HIV tablets, they're taking all sorts of other stuff, for diabetes, for blood pressure, for, rheumatoid arthritis, asthma, stuff like that. So it's a constant battle, it's a constant dialogue, constant engagement that you have to, do every single time to make sure that there are no changes in your tablets,
So we have some service users who are living with HIV, living into old age with HIV, and have recently been diagnosed with osteoporosis, for example. So they're issued with medication that will help to manage that condition, but they question how medical professionals will know whether these drugs will interact because they're the first generation to take both.
So there is a term that we have been taught in our pharmacy school, and the acronym is called ADME.
Mm-hmm.
So E is absorption, and the M bit is actually metabolism. So it's the M bit that's very important here. And what that means is when the drug goes into your body and it's broken down, it's basically broken down by enzymes some of the time. Well, most of the time, actually. And the enzymes are specifically in the liver. So, drugs can be metabolized everywhere. Like it can be in the lungs, it can be in the kidney, but majority of it, when we're talking about HIV, what we are particularly concerned about is the liver enzymes. And it's called a CYP450 system, enzyme system, CYP450. So we know very well how this enzyme system affects the different HIV drugs that people take. Okay, so what we then do is, for instance, in your osteoporosis case, let's just say some guy gets prescribed a medication. So we go to the metabolism part of that drug, and that information is provided by the manufacturer. So they tell us how this osteoporosis drug gets metabolized in the body. And what we then do is then we check is it being metabolized by the liver? And if it is, how is it going to affect the HIV drug that the person is taking? And then what is the outcome? So the outcome generally is not to say, oh, if there is an interaction, then you shouldn't take it. It's actually not that straightforward. The way it works is sometimes adjusting the dose could work. Sometimes taking it at different timings could work. And sometimes it could be that you give it at a completely different, choose a different alternative. That's going to work. So, we don't do it all the time for every drug. Luckily, there is a website that actually does it for us. I would be wrong to take all the credit. Oh, it's all in there, and I know it all, but that's not true. There is a website which is globally looked at by all HIV healthcare professionals everywhere, and it's called HIVdruginteractions.org, and it's been developed by University of Liverpool. And they have this traffic light system where they say that the red interaction means don't take it. Green means, the interaction is unlikely. But then you have this amber and yellow interaction. And that is where our bread and butter comes in. And that's when we decide, okay, how are you going to manage it? And when you look into the drugs that are commonly prescribed for all these other comorbidities, blood pressure, diabetes, majority of them actually fall within the orange, the amber, and the yellows. So yeah, that's and that comes with experience, basically.
Yeah. It's so much more in depth than I ever imagined. So what you're sharing is really, really helpful, and really helpful, I think, for people living with HIV. Because I think no matter what your medical condition is, there's always a slight doubt. Do the medical professionals, have they got my best interests at heart? And I think since COVID, there's been way more suspicion aimed at the medical profession than is necessary or warranted. So hearing what you're saying alleviates all of those worries, doesn't it? Because you really have their best interests at heart. Of course you do. Why wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what we work for. That's what we train for, to just become a pharmacist, you have to do a 4-year university training, and then you have to pass this incredibly difficult exam in your year 5. And then your journey actually starts to specialize. Then you have to do a diploma for 3 years. Then you have to go in, rotate into this rotation, which could be your specialty. And I chose infectious diseases. Literally a HIV specialist pharmacist or any specialist pharmacist has pretty much got about 10 years, I would say, give or take, amount of training behind. So incredible amount of work actually goes in before we can confidently say, okay, you can actually take the tablets, because we're very mindful that, we are the last point of contact between this person actually taking the tablet. So when you think of it that way, yeah, it can be a bit too much, but but that's what we train for.
And what made you choose infectious diseases and HIV?
Well, that's a very interesting story. So basically the way it works is you, in your 5th year, you choose whether, actually by year 5, everybody knows whether they want to go to work for Boots, whether they want to go to work for NHS. And for me, I always knew that it's going to be the hospital. But I had no idea what rotation I'm going to choose or where am I going to specialize. So the way it works is when you first go into the working for NHS hospital, you get these short rotations where they give you a little bit of a taster for every rotation. And it's 3-month rotations. And after 3 years is when people start to figure out where they're going to, specialize. And for me, it was, the whole 3 years had gone and I did not know where I was going to specialize. So I was like, my God, should I be a pharmacist? Like, what the hell? How come I don't know right now? And it just so happened that HIV was my last 3-month rotation. And when I went into that rotation, I actually did not even know the difference between HIV and AIDS like that much. My knowledge was that basic. And then I met and I worked with HIV healthcare professionals, including the doctors who were actually, still working from the ages of the 1980s and 90s. And what was really fascinating to me was, well, by that time, HIV was a chronic condition, right? But how many chronic conditions can you actually say that you still have people who started when this thing emerged to still be working? So I was fascinated by that. I was fascinated by the stories that the patients would tell us, and then the doctors would tell us about how AZT came into the market. And so I was like, this is incredible. And then the second thing, which is very unique to HIV, is that the minute you give patients the treatment and the drop in viral load that you see, right, within week 3, week 4, like it's 10 log drop. You know, 1 million viral copies per mil can become just 100. And, you know, suddenly a patient is like, you know, I can feel my strength coming back, or, you know, I can feel more energetic. And you're like, you know, I have personally had never seen that kind of impact into patients' life, where, you know, psychologically they do much better to say that, oh, I'm undetectable, I'm not going to pass it to anyone. Like, you know, that joy that you see, and you're able to clinically monitor it from your viral load count, from your CD4 count. I was just in love. I was like, this is incredible. You know, like where else can you actually see the impact, you know, that people can actually see? You get a feedback from them, and clinically you can see they're doing so well. So I was hooked, you know, from that time. And that was like 12 years ago.
Wow. And you've worked across different hospitals. I mean, I imagine that there's never a quiet moment for you. You must always be busy.
Yes. Yeah. So, yes. So, well, fortunately for me, from an experience point of view, the HIV centers that I worked at were the biggest in not just in London, in actually biggest in the UK, and one of them was biggest in the Europe. So just to give you an example, I trained at Royal Free Hospital, which is in well, they're all in London. Royal Free Hospital. And then I went to Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, which is the biggest center in Europe in terms of number for HIV patients. And, you know, currently I'm actually working at Barts Hospital, which is another big HIV center. I've done a little bit of HIV work in outside London center as well. So it's just been, you know, great exposure. And it is incredibly busy. You know, sometimes you have outpatient settings that's huge or busy. Sometimes you have inpatient settings where people are ill and, you know, they need more looking after. So yeah, there is never a dull day.
Ever a day where you sit back with a cup of tea and think, oh, this is nice, not too much going on today?
No, the clinics are always full, you know. But, you know, I think when you're doing the outpatient setting, I think there is one bit of respite, which obviously comes with a lot of exposure or experience, is that you get used to it. And, you know, things kind of become easier, I would say. Not easy, because you've seen a lot of things happening. Or a lot of prescriptions, and, you know, you have seen enough drugs and drug interactions, and, you know, things tend to repeat themselves quite a lot. So it gets easier, but starting is never easy.
That's so true. Definitely. One of the things, as another question really from our service users, is what happens if they miss a day's medication? Should they panic, or is one day missed okay?
So, you know, I would never say to miss a dose. You know, I think drugs only work when there is a constant amount of drug in your body. So you should really take your medication every day, same time every day, more or less. However, we're all human. I'm pretty crap at taking tablets. Well, you know, there is a bit of a hypocritical thing for me to say, oh, take it. And then, you know, I know my situation. So to answer your question, if you do miss a dose, don't worry. Don't panic, because these drugs are designed to keep those kind of situations in mind. Okay. So the amount of drug that's required to keep your virus suppressed, there is more than enough drug in your daily tablet that you take. So that basically compensates for it. The key to note is that, as soon as you remember, if it's still within the 12-hour window, for some drug it's 12, for some drug it's 18-hour window. If it's still within that time of you remembering it, you should take it. Okay. And which one is 12, which one is 18? It's very drug specific. So you can speak to the pharmacist. But the key to note is, let's just say you go past that window and you miss the dose completely. Don't take double the dose for the next day to try and make up for the lost one, because it does not provide any additional benefit. If anything, it might give you side effects.
Right. Okay. That makes perfect sense. And I think that'd be reassuring for a lot of people, because I hear the panic when someone says, I forgot to take my medication today.
No, I know, but it's easy done. It's easy done, and we understand that. But then, the additional thing that we do say that, if it's a one-off and, that that is the case, then it's fine. But sometimes people do come to us and say, oh, I always sometimes forget, because they have work schedule or they travel a lot. In those kind of scenarios, we then offer some additional support to say, maybe get those pill boxes, maybe try and keep them next to your bedside, or try and attach taking the tablet with some habit. It could be waking up, it could be brushing your teeth. It could be an app which is going to remind you constantly time to take your tablets. So, there are other ways to make sure patients get, their adherence on track. So, and, we're just there to assess and help.
It's all good advice. And again, it's almost beyond your remit as a pharmacist, and highlights how much you care as a profession, because it isn't easy, is it, to take medication? I think it's a constant reminder that you've got HIV. And for some people, it's just too much else going on in their lifestyle to take those tablets, which is frustrating. And we've seen many discussions within our drop-in where you have people who staunchly take their medication every day and people that just dip in and out, and frustrations on both sides. But again, as a member of the healthcare professionals, you completely understand that for some people it is very difficult, however frustrating that might be. Some people just cannot get into a routine of taking their meds every day.
Yeah, let me be the first one to tell you, and this is me taking my healthcare hat off. Taking tablets regularly is not easy. It is very difficult. And what we are asking people is a huge task. What I'm saying is, here's your tablet, take this same time every day, off you go for the rest of your life. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. And, I think recognizing it is the first step. Initially I had this maybe partially judgmental brain of mine, or you can say untrained brain, where I was like, this medication is going to save your life. Why are you not taking it? Da, da, da. But then, when you put yourself into their shoes and the stuff that they're going through, taking tablets might not be their priority, and you have to accept that. And then once you've done that, then patients tend to open up a little bit more. And there have been times when we've been able to turn things around by just working around their current situation. So, for instance, I'm sure you're aware that now you have drugs that don't need to be taken daily. There is a preparation which can actually be given as a depot injection, which they only have to take once every 2 months. Or sometimes we have a regime that is just more robust, so that, it can be given even if, they miss the window, but they can take it later on, even that's fine. Can we actually change the regime to say, okay, maybe take this in the evening as opposed to taking it in the, during the daytime? It could be whatever is niggling problems. I think, it will only help, you'd only be able to help if you can actually acknowledge that what we're asking them to do is not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we're so on the same page.
I know. That's why when I saw your podcast, when I saw you guys talk, and the passion and the enthusiasm that you guys talk about, and I think you guys are doing God's work, to be very honest, because HIV diagnosis can be incredibly isolating. For people, and especially if these guys are living away from their home, their family, or they just don't feel like they can actually talk about their diagnosis with their family, So essentially people do lead double lives, and no one knows what they're going through, but themselves. So, to have a charity like that where people can actually come in and actually, get help from things that they're struggling with the most, I think it's very noble. It's very noble of you guys.
Oh, thank you. Do you know what? That means a lot. I mean, we're in awe of you. I'm sure you can tell by my facial expressions as you're talking. I'm like, such an important role you have, such an important role. And I'm glad you're able to share that here, because I'm sure I can't have been the only one to think, well, pharmacist is just all tablets, isn't it? So much more than that, so much more. Can I ask you about your podcast?
So, on a very busy day, I'm actually giving you a bit of a background story of this. I've worked in HIV for about 12 years now. And on a very busy day, I'm able to see, I would say, about anywhere between 10 to 20 patients. That's the range, And my expertise or knowledge is only available Monday to Friday, 9 till 5:30, right? And once a patient doesn't have an appointment with me, next time he or she might see me could be in 4 months' time, it could be in 6 months' time. And you have, patients living with HIV globally. There are 9 million patients who are living with HIV. And it's, it always used to boggle my mind as to say, like, how is it possible that whatever I know, how can I digitize this in a way where patients can access this information whenever they want, wherever they want? And that, for years, I used to think about these questions until, one day I thought maybe I could just turn it into bite-sized podcast information, like bite-sized episode. So, and then out of that came Sex and Bites, my little podcast. So it is literally everything that I know. I want to digitize the information as in as user-friendly manner as I can, and that's how this whole podcasting started. And it started during COVID time, the idea. But during COVID, it was incredibly busy because I was redeployed to do the COVID work. But, that is when I've just realized like how important information is. The amount of misinformation that went out during COVID and the whole saga you actually know. So I was like, what, there is definitely a room for evidence-based information, like the stuff that we physically tell patients in a one-to-one setting. What if I put it into audio and video so that it can be listened? It is available for like tens or thousands of people, and that is the essence of this podcast, Sex and Bites. So it's available, on Spotify, and then I am now really trying to gather courage to come on camera to actually, do videos like YouTube videos to set up a channel. So I started a very faceless video because I just wasn't confident about myself. And then this year, I've now started doing on-camera videos to try and give more authenticity, that there is a man behind the voice. It's not some kind of AI generated stuff. And it's literally just to try and help as many people as I can. And that is my hope and wish, to make people's life different, better.
Yeah, it's such a good idea and so needed. So absolutely fully endorse this. Encourage everyone to go and have a listen because it's really, really helpful. And so it's privileged to be able to have access to your wealth of knowledge. So I'm so happy, and I'm happy that you've decided to go on camera. Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm still like, I'm still don't know, is my head right, or am I supposed to be sitting upright? This, that, like, there is so different, talking to a screen. I'm a very people's person, so I'm like so used to speaking with so many patients, whether it's healthcare professionals or NHS is full, like the hospitals, and then for you to just sitting in a room talking to a camera without getting any feedback, it's very disorientating. And completely new experience, but I'm getting used to it.
It's so difficult, isn't it? I haven't done it very often. We had to, a few years ago, I had to record myself for a funding bid just talking about the organisation. I mean, literally a 1-minute clip, and it took all afternoon.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
Whenever-
you watch it back, or you fluff it up, or you forget what you're saying. Oh, it's just, so I take my hat off to you, because you're doing what I can't do. Amazing, absolutely amazing.
But you guys are brilliant in your own way, and all in your unique way. Like what you have done with this podcast is incredible. Yeah, HIV is such a, the amount of stigma that's around this topic, it's huge and it's self-explanatory. But the way you guys, with your light-hearted conversations, the joke, the banter, like the rapport you have, it is incredible. And, no wonder you guys are so popular and loved and stuff,
Thank you. Now that you've been on our podcast, you've become part of our HIV crew and you can never leave. Does that worry you?
I am honored. I am honored to be part of the team,
Good answer. You've passed the initiation test. You are now part of our crew. Brilliant. Is there anything else you want to add before we end? Can I just say, that sounds like it's like a proper job interview. It really isn't.
I suppose, if any, for me as a pharmacist, again, putting my healthcare professional hat back on, the thing is that, we are, as health professional pharmacists, are here to help patients, for anyone who's actually, thinking or struggling with anything that's related to HIV medication, whether it's side effects, whether it's, if you overdose by mistakes, or you've ran out of tablets, or, drug interactions that we discussed, or even, pregnancy, breastfeeding, taking drugs not easy, and we appreciate that. But if you have any reason that you think that, you want to stop taking your tablets, or you can't deal with it, I would just urge to, come talk to us first before you make that decision, and maybe we would be able to help you,
Yes.
So, yes, I mean, with any of these decision making with regards to medication, please come talk to us.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect advice. No one should have to manage this on their own, and they don't need to, because we have people like you to help us, which is fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today, and for speaking so eloquently about your job role. I can take tips off you. We should do that after the interview. How do you manage to articulate yourself so well?
Oh, really?
And I hope that you'll come back again, because I know we're going to have more questions in the future from service users or people who listen to the podcast. So it'd be lovely to speak with you again. But for now, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so there you go, Zoe. What a lovely person Abhi is. Really, really, you can tell how passionate he is about his job. I think that really came through. And it's just so lovely that we have people like that within the NHS.
Oh, definitely. I mean, what he's doing is amazing and so interesting. I've learned a lot from that episode, and he's just so lovely.
Really, really lovely.
I'd love him to be back on the podcast, because I think there's lots more that you can discuss with him, like you said.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Can't wait to have it back on. In the meantime, do I need to organise counselling for this kind of Liverpool football thing? Thanks for listening to the HIV podcast. If you enjoyed our podcast, please like, rate and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts.
You can now also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the HIV Podcast for behind the scenes insights and video. The HIV Podcast is produced by Thames Valley Positive Support.